Uh, Today I have Dr. Serlin. She's very dear to me. We met in our group, COVID IPV group, chaired by my dear friend Leonard Walker. And Dr. Serling is a licensed psychologist plus a registered dance and movement therapist in practice in San Francisco. That's why I have this background
Background.
in honor to San Francisco. And she has done and keeps doing teaching trainings in the US and internationally. And in the past, she is the past president. Let me check my notes of the San Francisco Psychological Association. Um, she also is a fellow of American Psychological Association, past president of the Division of Humanistic Psychology, and recently she has won and received the Rollo May Award in 2019 from APA Society for Humanistic Studies and the California Psychological Association Distinguished Humanitarian Contribution Award. And today, in my interview for Inspirations, and we call it in Spanish, Con-Vidas de Inspiración, that will be Inspirational Lives in English. Um, Eileen, please, could you give us some of your inspirations throughout your life, how you started, dancing and converging and uh, being a psychologist, or first you were a dancer and then you started your bachelor's in psychology, and what have inspired you throughout your life, how you managed to go into the humanistic studies and plus humanitarian contributions that you got awarded recently, and
Oof.
projects that you could share with us. And anyways, please go ahead, Eileen. Thank you so much. It's an honor to have you.
Oh, Patricia, it's so delightful hearing you. I could just sit and listen to you forever. Um, but you mentioned dance, so I'll just start with dance because that is something really important, and I want everybody to dance. I believe we all were born with the ability to dance. For me, as a kid, I was thinking about this. I was what we call in America a tomboy. That is, I love sports. I love to be outdoors. I played with boys. I thought they were much more interesting than girls because they were active. I was climbing trees. And I knew at that point that I could mimic people, like the way they walked. And I was always very sensitive to, now it was nonverbal communication, but I used to kind of make little games of imitating people and things. So my body was always already attuned to other people. For the dance, like so many, I was turned off by some typical dance classes that were so silly in physical education in school or in dance, where we would have to wear tutus, or it was very structured. Well, that was not my personality. So I didn't think of myself as a dancer. But what I did love to do was folk dancing, was when it started. So that was when I was 14. I went to Israel for the summer. I had never seen anything like this because I grew up in the suburbs, very normal suburbs in New York. Here on a Friday night, everybody dresses in blue and white and they get out the best china and do the tables all in white. And then in Israel, they would make a what we call bonfire fire, and we would dance and sing for hours and hours, going around and around the fire. And I was so enchanted with what a different way, and of course in Israel, and it's still true in a lot, that people are so much closer to the earth, and there's a lot more singing and dancing, and as in your country, I think in the United States, in more northern countries, we have cocktail parties and we talk, and it's very verbal. Um, but the southern countries more expressive, Israel, the Latin countries, the Mediterranean countries. So actually, I am Mediterranean by birth, Hebrew, and also my grandparents came from Russia. I did some dancing back there where they do folk dancing also. So it's in my blood, the folk dancing. You don't find it in the American suburbs. So one thing is I always felt a little bit different that, so the Israeli folk dance really taught me many things that later I have a psychological theory to explain. Jungian psychology taught me about the power of archetypes. So now when I do all over the world, almost all cultures have circle dances.
Yes.
That a lot of these dances, you'll see similar forms and patterns, circles and spirals and lines coming forward. These are universal symbols that connect human beings, that are bigger than the individual. They connect us to ourselves. Most dances we're either holding hands or holding scarves or interacting with the lines go between each other. So there's always interaction, partner dancing. We've lost so much of that in this culture. As I got more socialized into an academic life, more books, more reading, more thinking, dancing was always on the side. I always folk danced because I love in folk dance, what you have is the combination of the dance and a story. You wear costumes and there's music and you're dancing about the bride goes out to the field and she's about to get married, or village dances do weddings. So that was all just enchanting to me. So back and forth, I could see how life in the suburbs and life in modern technological world is missing so much. Later on, I learned language that talks about the language of the soul and the language of the heart and the language of the arts. I didn't know any of that then, I just felt it. And that I would come alive dancing. So I used to dance a lot, but mostly folk dancing. I love going to different countries, learning about things like how many dances, Hungarian folk dances, this is what horses do on the ground. And you have movements that, and people that wear boots and they dance, they work with horses. And a lot of the steps are like horses, or putting the seeds in the ground, or plowing the soil, or picking grapes from the trees. So you're imitating human movements of work. I could go on and on about this. Much later, I've read anthropology, I've read cross-cultural studies, and I could see how dance from early on was a primary mode of communication.
Yes, indeed.
Some dance historians call dance the mother of the arts because it was not separated. You didn't have dance and music and singing and painting. It was all together initially.
Yeah.
Why later on I talk about whole person health, because we've separated all these specializations. You know, you don't go to a doctor, you go to a hand doctor who only works with these fingers but doesn't work with these fingers. And we become so fragmented and so specialized.
It is.
Dance, so that's the thing. It was always for me a way of expression, a way of coming alive. Communities, I used to meet all my boyfriends dancing, which was, I think, a very healthy way. It's a lot different than, you know, swiping on a phone app. To meet, you see them in action, you know, and you get to know a lot about people just by observing the way they are in a group. And that used to be, I'm going to talk too much, but that used to be Valentine's dances and ballroom dances. That used to be where people met each other, where social life went on. So much of that is gone.
Yeah, it's true. And how you merge dance therapy and movement and your psychological, being a licensed psychologist, how you manage to merge it.
Oh, yes. So many different ways. So I'll just tell a few stories. The first time I saw this dance therapy in a professional way was I did an internship at a very typical state hospital, psychiatric hospital. People were I went into the back wards where people had not spoken in 40 years, patients. We would put on music. I saw people come alive. I saw people connect to each other. I saw people start focusing because the music, the rhythm organizes movements toward people, away from people, gets people connecting, gets people expressing various things. We would cry, we would laugh. I saw how even in a psychiatric hospital, in the morning, Monday mornings, we would say, "How are you?" People not talking. I would start just doing some exercises, and all of a sudden people were talking and interacting more. So my first exposure was in backward psychiatric hospitals. And my first job was in a children's hospital where I worked with autistic children. One girl, 11 years old, who was mute, voluntarily mute. She just stopped talking. And she was in this hospital. And I saw that she didn't mind being touched. And I worked with her in the swimming pool. And then I discovered she liked to be held and swung. And then I stopped and she'd say, "Up." And then I'd stop and she'd say, "Down, up, down." And she began to talk because it was all connected, motivation and movement. And so many ways that movement and rhythm could reach people who either decided not to speak, could not speak, would not speak something. In many ways, that was my first exposure. It was very powerful. And I decided to follow. This was the first class in dance therapy, 1971. First official government-sponsored master's program. And so I went in it. All my colleagues went to medical school and high prestige professions, and dance is not high prestige, but tends to be mostly women. And I discovered that in the hospital, you're considered recreation, not serious therapy. So there were always battles to say, this is where we're really making the relationship with the patients. This is where change actually happens. This is where, and I became a psychologist partly so I could be the ones making the decisions about if the patient should join the group or be discharged or what their treatment plan. So I could be part of the treatment planning. And I've been really trying to integrate those two professions ever since, which are still, psychology is still very, very verbal in so many ways.
Yeah. It related to trauma, you are a trauma specialist, and you have applied dance and movement to trauma patients and how this works, Ilene, and gives them hope. Tell us something about it.
Oh, you just said the word hope. So, that's one of the first things. I just want to, the first story that comes to mind, I don't remember if I told you about working with Israeli soldiers, those young girls, and they painted a sun and hope. They couldn't speak about, often your unconscious comes out first in the body or in symbols before it reaches the conscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, in your spontaneous drawings, draw a sun or find yourself beginning to, after you reflect and you say, wow, I felt hope, or I'm feeling hope. But it's lower on the consciousness is the arts, and things can get expressed and felt there before they reach the conscious mind. So that's just one thing about giving people acts. In trauma, the body's shut down.
Yes.
That's another thing, which is, we know, adaptive, because fight, flight, or numbness or denial, if you can't deal with it, then you just leave your body.
Mm-hmm.
I actually spent a year working with the Catholic Church with victims of sexual abuse in the 1980s, and talk about numbness and bodies shut down, and long histories of bodies being bad, bodies being shameful, bodies being sex being shameful, all of that. So the bodies really have to be shut down, and beginning to bring that alive again and bring emotions again is through the body.
Yeah, through your guidance and knowledge, right?
Well, the
That's
psychological part comes in, number one, in being careful, because if we've left our bodies or dissociation, it's a point of great fear. I'm vulnerable if I'm in my body. I've been hurt before. I don't want to hurt again. I'll just stay dissociated. It's more safe. To bring people back into their bodies slowly, carefully.
Yeah, it is. It's
It's
very important
psychological.
to have knowledge of what you're doing,
Exactly.
especially with trauma patients and vulnerable people that have been through terrible things, right?
Because dance is powerful. It
Yeah.
can release grief. I've seen people just fall on the floor crying after something. So you really have to know how to pace it, have to be a safe container, safety, safety, safety. All of that builds slowly. Yeah.
Yeah. And what would you recommend or suggest people right now during COVID times that we are under such uncertainties and stress?
Ah,
What kind of inspirations you will give us, Elaine?
do you want to do just a few tiny little experiential?
Yeah.
Well, let's do this now. This is tricky because as we talk, what usually happens in Zoom is that we are so focused on the image that we forget about our bodies or forget about what's.
Yes.
So one of the things I like to do, I do this in meditation. Here's another thing where I see people, we do meditation and I feel myself. And then all of a sudden it's finished. And we're back out into the normal, frantic, distracted. So this balance between self and other. So we can practice it now. Can you do this?
Yes.
When we were a kid, we'd rub our stomachs and can we do this? Well, can you do two things at the same time?
Okay.
And you make eye contact with me and talk to me at the same time, feeling where your weight is in the chair and your feet are grounding you.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't get lost in the screen or me or the thought, but you stay in your body while still interacting with someone else. And I like to do that. Sometimes we just maybe will, this they do in Buddhist meditation, mindfulness of body. Because I do this too. I get so excited that I forget myself. So come back over and over. It is a meditation mindfulness practice of coming back to the body. And for me, the most important thing is to be able to be in contact with other people. Women do this all the time. We get lost in relationships. We merge easily. How to be self and other. So one thing to do, we can all do this because anxiety.
Oh.
When we're anxious, some of it is because what's going to happen, or what bad thing could happen. And we get into the spiral of thinking. And we're not in the present moment. Combination, but developmentally, babies first feel their weight.
Uh-huh.
It's the earliest thing before we from our head. So anybody can do this. As we're talking on Zoom, just remember, seat, feet on the floor.
Yeah, that's
Come
very
back,
important.
come
Many
back into your
people
body.
don't ground themselves and they have their feet all over and not grounding. That's very important. And something else before finishing, and it's about half an hour already. What would you love to share with us, Eileen? What kind of projects you have in mind or already running that you could share with us?
You, Patricia, are going to share with me making a series of these videos because in my work, let's say, we've discovered there's grounding practices. Yeah, grounding practices. But I'm more interested in bringing them into everyday moments, little things you can do like just now. When you're going about your life, to ground yourself, to center yourself, to be aware of space behind you, all those things that help us move through life, to make the transition from learning exercises to applying them in your life. Very simple little structured exercises, because Zoom has, some of this is new for me too. I've written so many articles and I'm realizing now how powerful this new media is for reaching people, for helping people. So, and that I think we're all learning together. And what I'm discovering over and over is simplicity is best. small, simple things anybody can do to stay grounded, to feel safe, to counteract anxiety.
Oh, wait. Oh, thank you so much, Ilene. I think we'll be having more of these inspirational interviews, and I'm very excited to follow your lead regarding this.
You're freezing now.
And because I did some dancing and cultural dancing in Uganda. Uh, and it was such an inspirational uh, feeling, experience when they invited us to a village and a community that had been through war, and women were dancing. And I love dancing. I never took classes, but when I hear music, and so I decided to join the women in Uganda in the northern part of. Shut down.
I know, I know, I know. It's just the last part.
Oh, anyways, I'll edit that. Let's. Oh, okay. So regarding Uganda, and I did not speak the language, right? So it was a village, not a village, a community, and there was the king and the queen, and they danced for us, and the women danced for us, and I decided to join in.
Uh-huh.
Oh
Uh-huh.
my God, they scream and cheer me up. Uh,
Yes.
well, they welcome, and they did this singing, and we were sisters all of a sudden.
Yes. Yes.
So, uh, dancing without there is no need to speak the language. It's
Yes.
the language of the body, and the dancing. It's all over, and if you dance with they feel well, they welcome you, and
Yes.
they feel that you are part of the group. So
Yes.
I think it's the most beautiful thing that we can do in doing humanitarian work, or any kind of work in different areas of the country, even in the United States, or in Spain. You know, that we have different dance cultures from the northern part, southern part. So, anyways, uh, thank you so much, Eileen. Again, it's been an honor to have you, and I hope I can edit this interview and and release it soon.